Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Katrina and this is I love audiobooks, and so I want to talk about my favorite narrators. And sadly, I'm going to probably go to hell for the one that I don't like. So let's start with my favorite, and number one is Julia Whalen. First of all, how does she have the time to do as many books as she does? That's the first thing. But she has done some of my favorite books, and part of why I think those books became my favorites is because of her voice. And I think to be a good narrator, you have to, first of all, have energy in your voice. You have to not have any weird tics. There's some narrators like Dick Hill and Scott Brick. Scott Brick is like over dramatic, and there's a weird way that Dick Hill talks that I can't ever not hear. Julia Whalen doesn't have anything like that, and she can all the different characters. And so I've read the two books that I first listened to because of her had a very large cast of characters, and I never was confused as to who was talking when she did it. She's just great at bringing energy and life to these characters on the page. My next favorite narrator is Holbrook Smith. He voices the Rivers of London series by Ben Aronovich. And first of all, he has this dark chocolatey sounding voice. And obviously he can do the different accents that are in England. But I love specifically the accent that he uses for Peter Grant's boss. It's a really posh, like old-fashioned English accent, and it made me fall in love with that character. Like, I love it. And so I've heard him in another book, and I didn't realize he was the one narrating, and I just kept thinking, oh, I love this guy. Who is this guy? And I looked it up, and it was him, because I specifically know him just from the River of London series, and I haven't quite found him in other book series yet, but he was in this other one. I have to think about what book it was. It was recent, and it had dual narration, and I was just like, who is this guy? His voice sounds great, but he was doing a different sound. He had a different sound to his voice, and that is just so unique and interesting. And a lot of us think, oh, I could do that, I could do that job really well. I don't know, some of the, like, be a narrator. We think, oh, I could be a narrator, or I could do that. But just reading to my kids at night and trying to remember that I was doing a voice for somebody, and my daughter will remind me that, like, I'll be doing a monster voice, and then all of a sudden the next sentence is supposed to be a princess, and I'll still be doing the monster voice. It's not easy. And so I really appreciate the ability to have a different voice for different people. Obviously they edit it, and they probably pre-look at it. Like, I don't get to pre-look at the books, so that's why I end up using the wrong voice for people all the time. So I understand that there's editing and practicing and things like that, but there is still a talent, especially because I read so many, and so many people don't do it for me, or are just bland. There's nothing special one way or another. And then there's some people who will literally mess up the reading. They'll mess up the whole experience by how wooden they are, or how the odd choice they made with the character, or something like that. So Holbrook Smith, great. I'm noticing a trend here. A lot of these narrators stick with a certain author and read all of their books, and that is true of Zara Ram. She does all of the Jodi Taylor St. Mary's books. The St. Mary's series is about these scientists who, in like an alternate time from us have found time travel. And, you know, obviously that the things that have happened with time travel, you know, there's wars and things like that. And then, you know, the time police have come and they have regulated the timeline again. And so these guys are just historians and scientists, and they just go to observe. And the main character, Max, is sarcastic and funny and sensitive and vulnerable. And Zara Ram reads her perfectly. And I don't even know how many books there are now. I mean, it's in the double digits now, and I never tire of it. And I would riot if somebody else read those books. The next person has the same thing. It's Davina Porter. She has an amazing, she's English, she's older, but she can somehow sound older and sound younger. She is the narrator for Outlander, for the Outlander series, and she also narrates Avalon. Is it Marion Zimmerman Bradley, the Avalon series, and she just elevates everything that she reads. It just sounds more magical. It sounds more. It sounds like a magic rooted in like ancient pagan ritual or something like that. It sounds real. It's not at all whimsical. And there is somebody on the list who is kind of whimsical. Like Zara Ram is a little more whimsical, but Zara, she has pathos as well, because Max has a lot of issues, and she can portray that just as much. But Davina Porter is like someone who, you know, carries herself, you know, really stately, and you always would feel like you need to stiffen your spine around her. But she reads Claire beautifully. She reads the Outlander books beautifully, and she reads the women of Arthur, of the Arthurian legend, in those books beautiful. Bonnie Turpin is another reader or narrator that I love, but I know when I hear her, and I always enjoy her, and she does Southern women really well. No, she did the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. She did them, and those were all white women except for one black woman that was in the book, and she did it well. She did the suburban, country sounding white women really well. She does. My daughter even likes her and knows her by name, because my daughter listens to a lot of the kid books that Bonnie will narrate, and she can go from Southern white ladies to, you know, regular black women to little kids, and do it flawlessly. So Bonnie Turpin for the win. Now the last one is Amanda Ronconi. She reads all of Molly Harper's books, and if you watch my videos regularly, you know I love Molly Harper. She writes Southern, funny, paranormal romances, and my favorite of those is a series called the Mystic Bayou series. She has multiple series, and I'm working my way through the Half Moon Hollow, but I am totally caught up with Mystic Bayou, and I just love it. And Amanda Ronconi captures the upbeat, funny, wacky situations that Molly Harper puts her characters in. Now, she always uses a man to do the male characters in Mystic Bayou, but you know, he's okay, but Amanda is perfect. Amanda does the women perfect, and it's almost like she is Molly's voice, and that's kind of how I imagine it. And a lot of times when you look up the pictures, you'll see them together, like they talk and they hang out and stuff. Like, so I just think that's really cool, and I just love her voice. Like I said, it's bright and sparkly, funny. She sounds like she's up to no good, like a lot of the characters are in the story. So that is the last of my favorite narrators who narrate other people's books. Now there's a couple authors who do their own books, and I really like that because, you know, an author already they know where to put the emphasis. They know what they meant with this passage, and those that can do it well, I welcome it. I've listened to Stephen King narrate a couple of his books. Victor LaValle has narrated the majority of the books that all the books that I've read of his, he's narrated. But the best author to narrate their own book was Ta-Nehisi Coates when he did Between the World and Me. That book was so personal to him, and it was a book that was wide as well. The book was to his son, but it was wide because it talks about being Black in America, and the majority of us know what it's like to be Black in America, and all of the pain, all of the confusion, all of the questions, hurt, fear, all of that you could hear in his voice. And I don't know. I think that the act of listening to that book and listening to Ta-Nehisi Coates himself read it was just as special and important as reading it on the page, because he just read it so beautifully. And you knew that this is not a narrator reading the author. This is the author reading what he wrote to his son. And it just had such an impact on me, and it packed such a big punch because of that. And it took it from me, where sometimes, most of the times when there's two different ways. When I read race stuff, I get really, really angry, and then I feel stifled because I'm like, what is the point of me knowing this? I can't do anything about it. It's ingrained in the very building of this nation, and James Baldwin has a saying. So this is me because I love knowledge, I love reading, I love politics. I'm interested in. I watch multiple political shows a day. I try to. I just for funsies, I listen to thick academic books about the history of the country, most likely when it comes to race and women and theology. But the more that real life begins to collide with that nerdy side of me, especially starting with Trayvon Martin's murder, this saying, I always knew it, and I've always butchered it, but I looked it up so I can say it right, because this is 100% me. To be a Negro in this country and to be relatively conscious is to be in a rage almost all the time. And that's the truth. I either am enraged or I'm fearing for my kids. And there's so many things that I do that are unproductive. Like, I sit around and wish my ancestors had made it to Canada, whether they tried or not. Like, I don't know. I don't know anything about my ancestors. But if they tried, I wish they would have made it. If they didn't try, I wish they would have tried and made it. I keep trying to figure out how I can move to Canada. Like this, so I understand this anger, hurt, pain, pathos that he put in this, and you hear it from his mouth. It made it more special. He ends the book with a sense of hope. And I wonder sometimes if that hope is because he can leave. He has the money to leave. He chose to come back. He actually lived in Paris for a while, and he chose to come back. But he has the ability to leave. He still feels like this is his land. His people built this land. But maybe that's where he gets the hope from. But that comes out in his story, in his narration of the story as well. And so I would suggest, I know a lot of people have issues with audiobooks, but this is one audiobook. And I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum. I'm never going to push my opinion of how people read on to someone. But if I were to ever do that, Ta-Nehisi Coates reading his own book, Between the World and Me, would be a way to do it. I also would recommend a new thing that I've started doing that I absolutely enjoy, which is reading a book while the audiobook is going as well. That's such a it's such a great new way of experiencing reading. It's like this multimedia way. Another thing for the difficult difficult names, for high fantasy, which is something I'm going to try, you know the names. Like, it's so funny because I saw this, I'm going to try to find the meme, but people who only read high fantasy or read books, any book, with their eyes, they'll know how to spell the name, but they won't know how to say it. And then people who listen to the audiobook, they know how to say it, but they don't know how to spell it or whatever. But when you do both together, you get the whole experience. You know how to say the name, you know how to spell it, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, I think it's just a really great multimedia way of experiencing books. Now that I'm off of that soapbox, this is not meant to be at all disrespectful. This man is dead, and I 100% am not making a joke. I'm not, or anything like that. Like, even my husband, when he saw my notes, he goes, "What? Why is his name on there?" Because this man is like a saint to Game of Thrones readers and listeners. Roy Dotrice should not have read those books. Now, the reason, Game of Thrones is what I'm talking about. The reason why is because he was very, very old when he was reading the books. And while like Davina Porter may be older, her voice doesn't have that sound in it. And she can make it sound more old and more young. Roy Dotrice sounds like a very, very old man. And the characters in Game of Thrones were much younger even than they did on the show. They aged up the characters on the show. And there's this one particular love scene, this sex scene, and it was so uncomfortable to hear Roy Dotrice, I'm putting up his picture so you can see, narrating that. So he died in 2017. He had a cameo in the show, and he recorded 200 hours of narration for the 5 books that we have out now. So that was a great feat. Like I said, I know that for me, it's just a me thing. Like I said, my husband thinks it's blasphemy. I am not at all making fun of this man or his legacy or anything like that. So those are my favorite narrators, plus sadly one that I wish did not read one of my favorite series, although he is probably a wonderful man, and rest in peace, rest in power to him. Let me know if you are an audiobook lover. Do you have any favorite narrators? Let's leave the talking head for our end of the video emoji if you don't have anything to say. Are you an audiobook, no audiobook? Have you tried the audiobook with reading the book? Let me know down in the comment box. Be easy on yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.